This Dionysian with the thyrsus looks a lot like Jesus carrying his cross. Oh wow, that really makes me think of the beloved disciple. Does that make you think of the beloved disciple? Justin Martyr said that there were some similarities between the Bacchae and the Gospels because of demonic influence. The Bacchae was written before. The book talks about the priests of Bacchus being young, effeminate men with long hair. That's similar to depictions of Jesus. First put on a linen dress, where Dionysus tells Pentheus to put on a dress in order to see the rites that he wants to see. That really made me think of the naked fugitive in Mark, slash maybe the beloved disciple, slash maybe even the secret gospel of Mark, or the gospel of secret Mark, whichever you want to call it. Kick against the goads, that was a phrase that Dionysus used, that Paul used in Acts 26:13. A misunderstanding mother is a good one. A good one. Dionysus' mother goes mad and misunderstands what's going on, and Jesus' mom misunderstands in Mark what's going on with him, basically. Pentheus saying, oh, I want to see these rites. I got to climb a hill or a tree or something to see these things. That reminded me of Zacchaeus, who had to climb a tree to see Jesus in the canon. And the thyrsus, as I mentioned, in one of those pieces of art, looks a lot like the cross when it comes to the Dionysian carrying it, like Jesus carried his cross. It kind of looked like that. And the cry ololo is mentioned a few times. That reminds me of Latin ululare, ululate. Reminds me of, and it reminds me of a paper that a scholar called Oppenheim wrote. He's talking about the dying and rising God, which is a concept. Resurrection, it went out of vogue by saying the way of seeing them as dying and rising gods. But Oppenheim wrote this when that wasn't the case. About the Shasu Alala. I think the Shasu Alala are a group maybe connected to or similar to the famous Shasu Yahweh in the inscription of Ramesses II and others. And I think the Alalu might be related to the Semitic root that's often spelled HLL, which is often found around references to a moon, especially a new moon. When you look up the Shasu Yahweh, you find a lot of people who seem to have very little confidence in interpreting the evidence available to them. There's a lot more evidence than that available to you. Go look at Gautier. Go look at these large amounts of Egyptology, Egyptological knowledge that have been neglected because it's just, there's a lot of stuff out there, frankly. You see Fleming saying, let's refer to specialists if we want to reinterpret this. You don't have to be a specialist to look in lexicons. His volume going from folded cloth to, is pronounced like the letter G. Look at that one, you start to see on the first few pages, you start seeing things that sound kind of like Shasu. It would be easier to find these kinds of correspondences, but look at this beautiful page where I see my hair pretty clearly when I saw this. Horanu, the Semito-Egyptian deity that's invoked in Ugarit and Egypt, all kinds of places, that sounds like it's related to Horus, right? But there's no accounting for that name, like Horanu, as being borrowed from the Egyptian language, I don't think. And the scholars think it comes from Canaan. I think it was one of those things where it was borrowed and then it was borrowed again. And And the fact that it doesn't look like an Egyptian name represents the fact that they reinterpreted it, if it did come from a name of Horus, that they may have reinterpreted it as a different meaning, which is a process that happens every time a new linguistic group of people looks at an old word. They try to say, can we make sense of this under our own understandings of our language? And they say, this means this. And it might be true for them during their time, but it doesn't mean that it's the source, the etymological source of the vocabulary. Anyway, I think that looks like Horanu, who is highly associated with Asiatics, as the Egyptians called them. And then the last one sounds like Shasu, I think. So, you notice anything in common? That first glyph, maybe this symbol, this Sa or Sha symbol, might be associated with Asiatics, might be associated with, Canaan, with Seth worshippers, which the Egyptians saw Asiatics as Seth worshippers primarily, and Seth as the god of the desert. Just to tell you, ouch! Jesus fucking Christ, that hurt! Oh!